checking out another episode of the Vinyl Village Garage Firebird Restoration Station. Today we're working on 1968 Firebird here. Working on plucking every piece and part off this little old bird to give her a whole freshen up and we'll get all once over. But today's project is what you kind of see here. I've already got the doghouse sheet metal, core support. All the bolt-on components on the front of the car have been removed, but I want to remove the whole front subframe with the engine, transmission, suspension, all as one assembly out from underneath the car. Not overly complicated, but if you've never done this before, well, it kind of maybe give you a little how-to, or at least see how it's done, or maybe how not to do it. But number one, first off, of course, to have a nice, firm, clean surface. Got it up on jack stands already, no big deal there, so I can climb under the car. So we have to disconnect a handful of things before we're trying to pull that thing out. Things under the car need to be disconnected: parking brake cable, drive shaft, speedometer cable if it's still intact. You got a brake line and a fuel line, and I believe that should just about cover it. But basically, we want to disconnect everything from the subframe so we can roll it separate of the body. And that way we can pull the engine and transmission a whole lot easier instead of trying to climb around underneath the car, because, well, I just don't like doing that. Trying to take care of this all in a little two-car garage just the same adds a little bit of a twist to the challenge, but it can be done. So I'm going to get underneath the car, show you what we have to disconnect, get those things disconnected, come up here top side, pop the steering shaft, and it should be ready to roll out from under the car. Show you how we do this. All right, what we're preparing to do is we're going to remove the engine, transmission, subframe, all front suspension as one piece from the body shell. And how I do that, a couple things: climb underneath there, disconnect the drive shaft. I already cut the exhaust off there, so it's completely 100% of the way. Got some parking brake cables, fuel line, and brake lines. And then the steering column will be the last piece. Then you can actually just pop this thing loose and roll it out from under the car as one big assembly. So I'm gonna get going on that. We'll climb underneath there, show you what we got. Like I said, we've already got it up here on the jack stand. It's just enough to get enough height to get under the car and do some fixing or working underneath the car. Don't want to get too carried away. But underneath, the goal is, this is actually the subframe here. It's all part of the, I guess, half of a frame of a car on these old unibody Firebirds. Fastener here, of course, opposite side just the same, and a fastener up here by the firewall. Those are the four essential bolts that actually hold this whole assembly to the body here itself. So I'm going to take all that loose, but to get this to come out of there, well, we got a fuel line on this side. If you start pulling that, it's not going to go very good. So we got to get the fuel line taken off. Then on the opposite frame, or on the driver's side, you'll have the brake line, which is similar to this. Parking brake cable I've already got disconnected. It's going to go with the subframe that way, and the rear one's going to stay on the car. And then up in here, of course, just the drive shaft. It goes back there. You could probably just leave it in place, like it'll plop on out when you drag it out, but it needs to come out anyway, so I'll go ahead and pop that, and the old speedometer cable on the opposite side there. So unscrew that, it comes on out. So I'll get all these things disconnected, then we'll flip up top side, take care of the steering shaft, and drag this thing out of there. I got everything all disconnected. What I ended up doing, decided to salvage this fuel line just for grins and giggles, but snap it out of clip one, clip number two, and then there's a bolt up on the frame up here on the top side that actually holds the fuel line to the top of the frame rail. And at that point now, I roll the subframe out, the fuel line will actually stay stationary on the body as this rolls forward. Parking brake cable's out of the way. I'm gonna leave the drive shaft inside. I go when I pull the whole subframe out of the car. Shouldn't be that big a deal. And then all I gotta do now is get all these bolts broke loose. But first off, I'm gonna put the car back on the ground, put these tires on the ground, and get some of my favorite tools ever in the garage, a bunch of bricks. I want to stack between here and the floor, so to take the bolts loose, the frame doesn't drop down. And then what I'll do is I'll jack the body up off of the subframe then. Now I've got the car pushed back, so I have a whole lot more space up here to roll that thing forward, because it's going to take up a little real estate here in the garage. But first things first, talk about getting some bricks, one of my favorite tools, of course. I'm going to slide those under the subframe on each side, so as I unbolt it, it should fall and land on that brick there. And then what I'll do then is we'll lift the body up off the subframe a little bit, put it on jack stands, and we'll roll that thing out. All right, same on this side here. Less than a 3-bricker here. Now what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and pull the 4 subframe bolts out. Now what that entails, we use the old trusty 1/2-inch impact and a 15/16 socket. Let's see if we can't get in here. Make these bolts come away. And I don't have enough room against my floor. Ah, nuts. Well, that's not gonna work. Get a smaller impact, I guess. Or of course, the other solution could be just a shorter socket. Let's see about. Look at this bolt. It actually looks like new. I've taken these out before. And this bolt's just about rusted away to nothing. But this is actually in really nice shape. I'm gonna do the same up here at the firewall. Well, that's more like it. That bolt's got a little more wear and tear and rust to it. She's starting to rot away. Well, side note, you're not supposed to be able to see through the floorboard right there. So that's got some issues there. That's one of the things we're going to have to take care of for sure. And I just about forgot to disconnect the steering linkage, so we got to do that too. But I went ahead and took care of the brake line, got it removed from the distribution block, so it's all set to go. So we'll go ahead and pop the steering linkage loose. I'm gonna try taking just this bolt out and sliding off, or I guess we can take the rag joint apart, but I'm probably gonna just pop this bolt out and pry it off there, and then get the other two bolts out of the other side of the subframe. All right, did take the bolt out here for the steering shafts. 12.716 sockets gets the old job done. Now I'm removing the subframe so I can kind of cheat and slide it off there, but sometimes you gotta take it apart here at the rag joint, take those two bolts out, but this one's a whole lot more easier. And as you can see, if I start to wiggle the subframe, actually, I'll go ahead and just pry this here. It'll come right off, so I'm not worried about it. It's not stuck. Of course, it moves the whole subframe forward a little bit, but you get the idea. As soon as I pop this thing loose, it's going to come off there. So I'm going to go ahead and get the other two bolts out of the other side of the subframe. See about dropping this thing on the floor. Downhill. Should rest on those bricks. Alright. Now, I'm going to get the body jacked up and put my jack stands here under the body and get some clearance. Now, the part that I'm hoping for is to get the body lifted up, get a little gap in the subframe. The jack stand, I'm going to put it right here. It should be double layers, plenty of strength left as long as it doesn't have some mystery rust in it. But we'll get the idea. We'll take it up here at the pinch weld. And we'll see what happens. There it goes. We'll slide. Not quite high enough yet. All right. Now let that down. Do the same to the other side. Well, I've got some clearance here. You can see here's our subframe, here's our body. Jack stand's holding the body up. That way, it even slid off the steering shaft, make my life a little easier. I've got the clearance that I need now. So the next thing is going to be, I'm going to try to slide the floor jack up underneath the cross member for the transmission. So as I roll this thing forward, that acts as some rear wheels for the, I guess say the subframe, keep it kind of nice and level. I can roll that thing hopefully right out of here. All right, the goal here is I'll get the jack underneath that cross member there so you can actually get the subframe up off the bricks. Hopefully, roll that thing out there. And I see daylight and I got the floor hopefully clean enough. We should be able to hopefully slide this thing right out of there. And I guess I did forget one thing here. A couple heater hoses, no big deal. Cut those out of the way. And then the throttle cable. I don't know how I forgot that, but as you're pulling it away from the firewall, it's starting to move forward pretty good. So you gotta overcome the friction of the, I guess, little tiny wheels of the jack on the floor, but we're making some progress. I can actually grab it now with one hand, but hopefully get this thing out of here. Looks like a choke cable. That's not factory. See what you do with that? Check this out. Ready? Set. Oh, okay. Now, okay, well, nothing else hanging me up. It ought to just come on right on out now. All right, got the subframe all pulled out, engine, transmission, all is one assembly. A few little snags, so don't forget the throttle cable. Don't forget if it has a manual choke, which they didn't, and your life will go a whole lot more easier. The other thing we're gonna have to do here is I'll probably just put the bricks back under the subframe so I can recover my jack, because I'm gonna need that. But something that caught my eye as I was rolling it out, but there's a massive dent in the floorboard hit up that direction. Of course, there's a hole from rust. These are all things I'm gonna have to fix, but I don't know what caused that. It's kind of an unusual place to have a dent. And I said, here in the transmission tunnel, I expect some little nicks and some burrs here from people pulling engines and transmissions, but that one's got me perplexed. I don't know what caused that. That's kind of a strange spot. And the other things they're notorious for is these, where the mounts hook up to the frame, they rust out pretty good. We'll see how bad this one is if I can get it. And of course, like a pepper grinder here, got like junk pulling out. And all right, there we go. Pretty bad. All right, now that's should be a hole just a little bigger than that. So as you can tell, we're gonna need some fixing on the subframe. And the other side is not looking a whole lot better. I can see daylight between the rear section there. So it's gonna need some fixing on the subframe, but there you have it. All pulled out, one piece, a whole lot easier to pull the engine and transmission, and it had to come out anyway, so it's kind of a fun way to do it. There you have it, mission accomplished. We now have a car body and then a subframe with an engine and transmission sitting up there. So they are officially two now. Able to get that done. Not too big of a task. The thing about it is, don't get in any big hurry. I kind of got a little overzealous, and then I kind of forgot to disconnect the manual choke cable, which they don't typically have, the accelerator cable, well, oops, and then the heater hoses. So a few things I forgot to disconnect, so I just kind of got in a bit of a hurry, I guess you could say, but not the end of the world. We make mistakes when doing this stuff, so all you got to do is stop, make an observation. It should roll nice and smooth. Let it kind of drop and anchor. Quick little look, a couple minutes there, a couple wrenches, ready to roll out. So they are separated now. Next step of the process is going to be rip the rear end out of this car. Got a few little knickknacks on the firewall, brake booster, wiper motor, and then the heater box here still needs to come out of there. A couple quarter glass windows in the back. But we're getting pretty close to having an empty shell. And we're going to make a solid assessment of what pieces and parts need replaced on this thing, because, well, I'll tell you what, this isn't the first one I've taken apart, but every one I've taken apart rusts completely differently. There's no pattern to it. There are common areas like the window channel, but other than that, I have no idea why they rust like they do. So this one's going to have some fun challenges, maybe something like you have on your car. And with that being said, if there's part of this process you would like to see in detail, please let me know in the comments so that I can go ahead and get that part of the video put in there for you, because, well, you don't want to miss that. Or maybe I can help you out with the process of your car to keep it moving down the road or get it back on the road just the same. But anyway, next step around, we'll get the next video going. We'll pull the rear end out of that thing and then finish stripping the body, and then we'll make an assessment, I'm hoping. But like I said, we got this part done. That was the goal for today. Got that finished, so I'm going to call it quits for now and then wash up my hands and go find something to eat, and we'll catch you guys the next time.